2017 was an extremely interesting year for soccer cleats. We saw limited edition releases, knitted uppers, the return of an icon, mid-cuts, low cuts, soccer-inspired sneakers, laceless cleats, cleats that were all about the laces, and zippers. What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my picks for the top 10 soccer cleats of the year. So, top 10 soccer cleats of the year is pretty self-explanatory. These are the 10 boots that I felt were the best of the best in terms of fit, feel, quality, and overall performance throughout the entire year of 2017. All shoes that I've personally worn, and of course comparing these top 10 to pretty much everything else to come out this year that I've been lucky enough to try out as well. So please keep in mind that if a shoe that you have is not on this top 10 list, that does not make it bad by any means at all. It just means that it's not one of my top 10 picks. There were only a few rules that I put out to make this list. The first being that these all had to be general releases. No limited edition boots can be on this list, but there were a lot of great limited edition releases this year. So maybe in a future top 5 or top 10 video, I can give you guys what I think are the top 5 limited edition boots of the year. If that's something you guys would like to see, I can definitely make that happen. The second and only other rule here is that I decided to include shoes that didn't come out in 2017, but obviously were available throughout the entire year. So something like a HYPERVENOM Phantom 3 would be pretty difficult to leave off the list because it was a significant release pretty much all throughout 2017. So I decided to include those shoes as well, because if I didn't, then you'd end up with shoes on this top 10 list that legitimately weren't the best of the best throughout the entire year. So please keep that in mind as well. Also, this top 10 list is in no particular order. Also, if you guys enjoyed the top 10 series on the channel and want to see it continue happening, don't forget to support this video with a like. Thanks. Pick number 1 is the ADIDAS PREDATOR 18.1, a shoe that a lot of people were super excited to see come back because so many people grew up on the Predators, so many people remember the Predator name. There was a lot of iconic models from that series over the years. So when ADIDAS took it away, obviously a lot of people were upset, but they've now brought it back, which hasn't necessarily made everybody happy. A lot of people would argue, including myself, that this isn't a true real Predator. It lacks the leather upper, it lacks the rubber striking elements, and in all honesty, I don't think that a leather Predator in 2017 would have been the right way to go, but something with some rubber elements like we had from the Predator Instinct before they killed it off, I think would have been definitely welcome on this particular design. But as a whole, kind of taking over for the Ace line, this is much better than the 17 Plus Pure Control, and I think it's much better than the Ace 17.1 Prime Knit as well. It still features a Prime Knit upper and a control skin top layer, but it now has a texture to it that I think is really nice, both from a feel as well as from a visual standpoint. And the knitted upper is just so much softer than pretty much any other knitted upper we saw before from the Ace line. So from that perspective, this is a really nice shoe. It's super comfortable, it fits really well. The sole plate and stud pattern is kind of typical ADIDAS. It's nothing really all that new, even though it has some different names to it. And of course, I picked the 18.1 and not the 18 Plus because of the lacing system. The lacing system makes the world of difference in terms of the quality of the fit, the adjustability, which you would not have if the shoes were laceless, and just the general lockdown and performance qualities because of that lacing system. Not to mention, it's actually much cheaper than that laceless model as well. So from a value perspective, I think the Predator 18.1 is definitely the way to go. The only reason you should buy the 18 Plus over the 18.1 is if you don't know how to tie your shoes. You know what? Get somebody else to tie your shoes for you. Buy the Predator 18.1 instead. Pick number 2 is the HYPERVENOM Phantom 3 Low. This is quite simply an excellent boot, one of the best Flyknit offerings on offer from Nike. And I specifically prefer the low cut version for a couple different reasons. Mainly the fact that I just prefer the overall fit, feel, and general comfort that you get from the low cut version. It's very familiar, there's nothing to get used to, where with a lot of Nike's mid-cut models, it can cause some discomfort during the break-in process. Once they're broken in, it's not really a big deal, but for me personally, just from a pure preference standpoint, the collar does nothing for me, and I would just rather have a low cut version of the shoe. The low cut version is technically a little bit lighter as well, although that weight difference is pretty much nothing that you're gonna notice on feet, but the low cut version is also $50 less expensive, which is important if you are on a tighter budget. However, if you like the mid-cut thing and you can afford it, by all means go for the mid-cut version. It is just as good from a performance standpoint. The quality of this Flyknit upper is fantastic. The responsiveness is great. I love the stud pattern. The fit of the shoe is kind of Mercurial-esque in terms of having a tighter wrap on your foot, but the overall last isn't super narrow. It's thin, but it has a little bit of a padded sensation to it as well, with the extra 3D texturing on the surface and the pour-on foams running through the striking zone. And again, the shoe as a whole, I think is really good. It's the best Hypervenom since the Phantom 1. And really, from a performance standpoint, I think that this blows the Phantom 1 out of the water. Number 3 is the Mizuno REBULA V1. I have specifically here the made in Japan version as an example, but having tried both the made in Japan and the Indonesian made version of the shoe, the made in Japan version being the more premium of the two, if you don't know your Mizuno products, I honestly don't notice a huge difference between them, so I'm just as happy to wear the cheaper version versus the more expensive version right here. But Mizuno diehards will argue to the death that I'm 100% wrong on that. Again, having tried both, I just didn't notice that big of a difference. However, either one you go for, they're very good quality. What's unique about the Mizuno REBULA is of course the kangaroo leather upper, which isn't kind of typical kangaroo leather. It's not really bulky, it doesn't have an overly padded sensation. The leather itself is extremely thin, so it almost has more of a barefoot feel on the ball with that slight bit of softness and that slight bit of cushion you would expect from a high quality leather material. It also has an internal support cage that not only adds structure to the upper, which is why you don't really see much stitching here, but it also is made from a memory foam that has some thickness to it and creates this dampened effect on the ball throughout the entire foot. The nice part about this is that the entire upper is pretty well the same material, so you get a very consistent touch on the ball no matter what part of your foot makes contact. Typically of Mizuno, it's very good build quality, extremely comfortable as well. I'm not a huge fan of the stud pattern, I must admit that, but as an overall package, I really like these. It's a replacement for the Wave Ignitus line, which I was also a big fan of, and I think as a replacement for that line, Mizuno has done a really good job here. Number 4 is the PUMA EVOPOWER Vigor 1, which was easily one of the most underrated shoes throughout the entirety of 2017, considering that it came out in January. Now, what PUMA did here with the EVOPOWER Vigor 1, which did end up being the last EVOPOWER, this line has technically been discontinued now with the PUMA 1 and the PUMA Future, is the last evolution of the EVOPOWER concept, where the upper is thin but at the same time has that padded element to it, which you have here with the Adapt-Lite synthetic and the AccuFoam dots this time around. And then of course that sole plate, the gradual stability frame that allows for that spring back effect, kind of the curling of your toes, a natural barefoot kicking sensation that supposedly is supposed to add more power. Does it actually do that? No, not really, but it does create for probably the most unique striking sensation of any boot out there on the market. It's kind of a striking element in a way, but not one that is physical on the shoe. It's just the entire shoe as a whole creates a very unique striking experience. Not to mention that the shoe is extremely comfortable out of the box, probably one of the most comfortable boots of the entire year. An excellent stud pattern, excellent flexibility, a very natural sensation on feet, and again, just a super unique package as a whole. While it's now discontinued, you can actually still get them in some of the older colorways. So if what I just described sounds good to you, get the EVOPOWER Vigor 1 while they're still available, because I definitely think it's a really solid option. On the topic of underrated, pick number 5 is the Under Armour CLUTCHFIT Force 3.0. Yes, the same company that came out with the zipper boot in 2017 also had one of the top 10 best in the form of the CLUTCHFIT Force. This is actually one of the shoes that was kind of my go-to when I wasn't testing out brand new products. I really like these. What's so great about the CLUTCHFIT, and this is the 3rd generation of this whole concept, is that it features a Trevella synthetic upper as a base, which is basically a stretchy microfiber, and then the CLUTCHFIT material on top of that, which is this pattern that isn't just there for show, it's actually a reinforcement webbing on the surface, allowing certain parts of the upper to stretch a little bit and certain parts to kind of have more reinforcement to it. So what you'll find is that when you put these on and tie the laces tight, the shoe basically stretches around your foot. The upper has this kind of elasticated feel to it, and then once you loosen the laces, it kind of pops back into its original shape. It essentially breaks in as you tie them in. It's a really interesting concept, and nothing really fits or feels quite like it. So in terms of out-of-the-box comfort, again, these are really good. The performance characteristics, the overall touch that it provides are excellent as well. It has a great stud pattern, the overall quality is great, and from a durability standpoint, there isn't much to complain about either. And also, because it wasn't the most popular shoe in the world, you can get these things on sale for half price, sometimes even less. So if you haven't scooped up a pair of these and you're on a tighter budget looking for something really, really good, the Under Armour ClutchFit Force 3.0 was legitimately one of the best shoes of 2017. At spot number 6, we have the Nike TIEMPO Legend 7. Which if you regularly watch the channel, then you'll know that I am personally a very big fan of this particular shoe. I really like the model before it, the Legend 6, and I like the Legend 5 before that as well. But the Legend 7 is a definite improvement over both of those two Tiempos. And if I had to pick a personal favorite on this top 10 list, it's easily the Nike TIEMPO Legend 7. What's so great about this shoe is you get the kangaroo leather softness and feel and comfort that is not the most common thing in 2017. Not everybody these days is after a kangaroo leather upper, but with that softness, kind of more traditional feel with the leather, you also get the responsiveness, something that you would not expect from a shoe of this type. The internal support cage, the fit mesh lining in the forefoot, the fly wire cables, the flying it through the midfoot and heel area, which is not quite as effective, but it definitely looks very cool. All of that combines for one of the most unique and most, I guess, cutting edge high-tech leather shoes ever to come out. It's very, very refined. There's a lot going on, but the shoe, when you have them on your feet, feels very together. It doesn't feel like a lot of different elements strapped onto a leather upper. It feels like it's one. It's a really, really well thought out concept. I love the idea of the Flyknit running through the midfoot, kind of creating this one piece effect to a certain extent. The fit of the shoe is excellent. The comfort is top notch. They made them lighter as well. This is the lightest TIEMPO Legend that we've ever had, weighing in at around 7 ounces or so. So these are as light as something like a Magista OBRA 2 as an example. A lot of people would expect these to weigh a lot more, and they gave it a more aggressive stud pattern. So if you've never tried a leather shoe before for fear that it was going to feel too old school, this allows you to have that old school touch and comfort, but with all the modern performance characteristics you would expect in 2017. Number 7 is the Adidas X17 Plus PureSpeed, which out of all the new Adidas models to release in 2017, I think the X17 generation of boots was probably the least exciting, especially the 17 Plus and 17.1, because they were basically the same as the 16 generation with some very minor tweaks. What changed coming from the X16 Plus Pure Chaos is the upper is a slightly thinner synthetic material with a different surface texturing, which does vary from colorway to colorway, and then they've tweaked the shape a little bit, making these fit that much nicer. What I like about this design and what I'm glad about them not changing is the fact that they actually have a very good concept right here. You have this kind of almost F50 Adizero 2014 style upper in terms of the synthetic material itself. It's thin, has that barefoot sensation, but at the same time doesn't lack the softness or padding you would want from a high-end shoe. It has this big lace cover. A lot of people think this is a laceless model. It is not, but the lace cover allows for a very kind of consistent feel and touch on the ball across the entire foot, which is really, really nice. The lockdown, even though it only has a very shallow lacing system, is quite good. Very responsive shoe. The lockdown in the heel is top-notch, probably one of the best on the market right now. The overall shoe's construction is very lightweight, but at the same time, it feels nice and solid. And then you get the FG-AG stud pattern, which is consistent across the board with Adidas models. So it's not necessarily exclusive to this shoe, but it is definitely nice if you regularly play on natural grass as well as artificial grass playing surfaces and only want to buy one single pair of shoes. For me, from the Adidas brand right now, I have to say that the PureSpeed is my personal favorite. Pick number 8 is the Puma Future 18.1, which I know I mentioned at the start of the video, no limited edition releases, but the first few colorways of this shoe have been limited. That will not be the case moving forward, so please keep that in mind. Now, this shoe's claim to fame is, of course, its net fit system on the upper, that it basically allows for unlimited lacing setups, something that we've really never seen before, and an interesting concept considering that Adidas is kind of going the laceless route, which is really trending for them quite well. So Puma's essentially done the exact opposite. Now, does this net fit system actually work? Yes, you legitimately can create any lacing system you want. And of course, that net fit system is on top of a knitted upper that feels quite nice. It has a thin, but at the same time, slightly padded feel to it. It's not really a barefoot sensation. I think it's a cool looking shoe. The fit without the laces, just the predetermined shape of the boot, is relatively high volume and relatively wide, so you definitely do need to have an effective lacing system in order to get proper fit, lockdown, and performance out of the shoe. And I like the sole plate and stud pattern, not to mention it's also FG-AG. The only thing about this shoe that is a little bit gimmicky gimmicky is the fact that people really seem to think that they can just create their own wild, kooky looking lacing system. Kooky, that's a really weird, I don't know why I said that, but we're gonna keep going on. Their own kind of crazy looking lacing system. Puma's kind of, I guess, marketing that aspect of the shoe themselves to a certain extent, but are these really crazy lacing systems actually all that effective? The simple answer to that question is no. If you're using one of those lacing systems that only crosses over like one time, you're not gonna get the best possible performance out of this shoe. In my opinion, if you're buying the Puma Future 18.1, by all means, play around with the fact that you can change up the lacing systems in whichever way that you want. But realistically, if you want the best lockdown, if you want the best comfort and performance, set up a lacing system in a way that you think would be the most effective based on how they feel on your feet. Tweak it 3 or 4 times until it feels just right, and then never change it again. If you're changing the lacing system every single time you play in the shoes based on what looks cool, you're gonna get inconsistent comfort, you're gonna get inconsistent fit, and to a certain extent, you're gonna get inconsistent performance as well. So it's a good shoe, but it's only a good shoe given that you set it up properly. Pick number 9 is the Nike Mercurial Vapor 11, and it makes this list simply because it is a best of in multiple categories. And really, as soccer cleats have progressed over the last year or so, it pretty much is the last of its kind. You can compare this to the X line from Adidas, but really it's not that comparable to the PureSpeed or the X17.1, not really that similar to the Nemesis line either. Nike doesn't really have anything else this thin, and Puma recently got rid of the EVOSpeed line, so really this is kind of its own standalone product in terms of what it has on offer. If you want lightweight, it's pretty much the lightest shoe out there right now. If you want the tightest fit, it's pretty much the tightest fitting shoe out there right now. If you want the most responsive sensation, I really think this is the most responsive shoe out there. And if you're looking for the best possible traction, nothing offers better traction than a Mercurial. So if all of that sounds good to you, the Vapor 11 really is the best of the best in all of those categories. The Tasian synthetic upper in the one-piece design has this consistent raw feel, a true barefoot sensation that you can't get from any other shoe. All things considered, as tight as it fits and as thin as the materials are, it is actually relatively comfortable once you get used to the way that they feel. The responsiveness is excellent, not only because of the structural integrity of the upper, but also because of that Nike played sole plate. The stud pattern is fantastic, kind of a signature of the Mercurial line, and it's a cool looking shoe at that. So again, if what I described sounds good to you, you cannot go wrong with the Vapor 11. And finally, at the number 10 spot, we have the Nike Magista OBRA 2, which is a shoe that has more or less fallen out of favor in 2017, I would say. The hype around this particular model has definitely died down since its initial release, but the fact that it is still a very high quality top end shoe has not changed at all. The full Flyknit construction and obviously the mid-cut design is not for everybody, but me not being a huge fan of mid-cut shoes in general, I actually don't mind the Magista OBRA 2. If I had to pick a mid-cut model from Nike to wear right now, it would be the OBRA 2. I actually find it relatively comfortable. It doesn't have that chafing at the back of the heel like the HYPERVENOM and the SUPERFLY will have for most people, including myself. At least that's been my experience with these. I really like the Flyknit upper. It's probably the most unique one out of everything they offer right now as a general release, of course, with its 3D texturing. It's thin, but at the same time, because of the heavy texturing, it really does have this interesting dampened sensation. It doesn't necessarily feel leather-like. Again, it's kind of its own unique thing, but it definitely is very satisfying and feels really nice on the ball. The fit is great. The responsiveness is good due to the structure of the upper as well as those flywire cables. It's not my favorite sole plate or stud pattern, but it definitely does get the job done. And again, it's kind of its own unique product. You kind of have to want a Magista OBRA 2 for it to be your #1 pick as your next pair of boots. But if it is what you're looking for, it's a legitimately very good product. An honorable mention, because I'm sure some people have already skimmed through all the picks and they are slightly triggered. If that is you, I apologize, but you'll notice that I left off the SUPERFLY 5, which is a very, very popular model. If this list was extended to 11, the SUPERFLY would be on it. But I decided that the Vapor was a better shoe overall in terms of the experience that I think a shoe like this strives to achieve. The Mercurial line is all about being as thin, as tight, as light, as aggressive as possible, and I feel like the Vapor does that better than the SUPERFLY 5. That is not to say that the SUPERFLY 5 is a bad shoe by any means. Again, if this were a top 11 and not a top 10, it would be in that top 11. But because the upper isn't as thin as the Vapor, because the shoe, in my opinion at least, isn't as comfortable as the Vapor, it's not as light as the Vapor, and it's kind of striving to be the same thing as the Vapor. I picked the Vapor over the Superfly. That's my preference, but I know a lot of people really like the Superfly. Again, it's not a bad shoe. I just don't think it's in the top 10, at least based on what I like. Anyways, guys, those were my picks for the top 10 best soccer cleats of 2017, including reasons why I thought they were all part of the top 10. However, your own opinion is definitely worth something as well. So leave your opinion down below in the comment section. I'd be really curious to hear what your top 3, top 5, or even top 10 picks were. What was your personal favorite of the year, period, based on what you've tried and based on what you've seen? I'm always curious to hear your opinions on this kind of stuff. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to leave that down below in the comments as well, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to support it with a like, subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. All my social media information is linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.